Let me tell you about a case that, even 100 years later, is just unbelievably chilling. We're going to a remote farmstead in Bavaria, Germany, where an entire family of 6 was brutally murdered. But it's not just the crime itself. It's what the killer did afterwards that turned this into one of history's most baffling and downright creepy unsolved mysteries. This is the story of Hinterkaifeck. Okay, so to really get this story, you have to know that it doesn't just start with the murders. No, this one begins with a series of strange, deeply unsettling omens that started piling up in the days before. It was this slow, creeping sense of dread that someone was watching the farm. Now, this is the detail that always gets me. Just days before the attack, the head of the family, Andreas Gruber, finds a set of footprints in the fresh snow. They lead straight from the dark woods right up to the farmhouse. But here's the thing, there were no tracks leading away. None. It's like someone literally walked out of the forest and just vanished onto their property. And that was just the start of it. I mean, the previous maid had quit months ago, totally spooked, saying the place was haunted, that she heard voices and footsteps in the attic. Then a newspaper from Munich, a city miles away that nobody in the family read, just shows up. A set of house keys disappears into thin air. And Andreas himself starts hearing those same footsteps in the attic and finds a lock on an outbuilding has been messed with. It was so clear that someone was stalking them, but for whatever reason, Andreas refused any help from neighbors, leaving his family completely exposed. Now, to understand what happens next, you really need to know a little bit about the family itself. The Grubers, they had money, but they were pretty isolated. Andreas, the patriarch, he was known for being difficult. But the darkest secret, the one that hung over the farm, was the widespread rumor of an incestuous relationship between Andreas and his own daughter, Victoria. And look, this wasn't just small-town gossip, it was actually in court files. And this detail, it's going to become hugely important later on. So all these strange events, this growing sense of fear, it all came to a head on the night of Friday, March 31st, 1922. That's when the unseen threat finally stepped out of the shadows.
6 people were killed, one by one, with a farm tool called a mattock. Just horrific. The entire family, from the 63-year-old grandfather down to his 2-year-old grandson, Josef, was just gone. And in the most tragic twist of fate, the new maid, Maria Baumgartner, was also among the victims. It was her very first day at the farm. She'd only been there for a few hours.
And this is where the timeline gets so eerie. For 4 full days, the farm just sat there in silence. People came by, salesmen, hunters, but nobody was around. A local guy passing at night got spooked by someone holding a lantern. Then, the family doesn't show up for church on Sunday. Little Cecilia doesn't go to school on Monday. The community starts to feel like something is seriously wrong, and finally, on Tuesday, April 4th, a search party goes in and finds them. But finding the 6 bodies was just the beginning. I mean, it was a horrific discovery, of course. But what investigators figured out next is what takes this case from a terrible crime to something truly monstrous. The farm had been silent, yes, but it hadn't been empty. For an estimated 3 days, the killer stayed. After murdering 6 people, this person didn't just flee into the night. They basically moved in. Just try to wrap your head around that for a second. The killer was feeding the livestock. They ate food from the kitchen. The neighbors even saw smoke coming from the chimney the whole weekend. This person made themselves at home, living there among their victims, just tending to the farm like it was a normal day. It's unbelievably brazen. And to make a terrible situation even worse, the investigation was, frankly, a total mess by today's standards. The crime scene was immediately contaminated. Neighbors were walking all over the place, even moving the bodies. And then, as if that weren't enough, the victims' skulls, which were taken for examination, were lost forever during World War II. So any chance of a modern forensic analysis? Completely gone. Pretty quickly, police figured out this wasn't about money. A huge stash of cash was found completely untouched in the house. So this wasn't a robbery. No, this was personal. And when things are personal, you start looking at the people closest to the victims. And here's the twist. The man who organized the search party, the one who found the bodies, he almost immediately became the #1 suspect. His name was Lorenz Schlittenbauer, and he was their neighbor. His actions that day were just bizarre. I mean, think about it. After finding 4 bodies in the barn, he doesn't wait for the other men. He goes into the main house all by himself. He doesn't break a door down. He uses his own key to get in. He moves the bodies around, and witnesses said he seemed weirdly calm about the whole thing. It was almost like he knew the killer wasn't there anymore. And motive? Oh, he had plenty. He'd had a relationship with Victoria and was widely believed to be the father of her son, Josef. He absolutely hated Andreas Gruber because the old man wouldn't let him marry her. And if he was Josef's father, with everyone else dead, guess who stood to inherit that very valuable farm? Years later, he'd make these weirdly specific comments, like speculating on how the ground was too frozen to bury the bodies, a detail only someone who was there would know. Now, to be fair, the police cast a really wide net. They looked at over 100 suspects. There was this wild theory about Victoria's husband, Carl Gabriel. He was supposed to have been killed in World War I, but they never found his body. Did he come back, find out about his wife and her father, and just snap? There were also a few sets of local brothers who had bad reputations and some loose connections to the family, so there were a lot of possibilities. But despite all the suspects, all the theories, and decades of investigation, no one was ever charged with the murders. The official files were closed in 1955, and the case went cold, turning from an active investigation into a dark local legend. But the story has one last frustrating twist. In 2007, a class at a German police academy decided to tackle Hinterkaifeck as a cold case project. They used modern investigative techniques to go over all the old evidence. Their conclusion? Because the original investigation was so badly handled, the case could never be proven in a court of law. But they did say they came to a unanimous agreement on who the most likely killer was. They just won't release the name out of respect for any living relatives. And that's what we're left with. It's pretty much an open secret that the students identified Lorenz Schlittenbauer, the neighbor with the key. But with no official confirmation, we can't really know for sure. The answer to who took that mattock to the Gruber family is almost certainly known by a few people. But for the rest of the world, the farmstead is just locked in a century of chilling, absolute silence.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.